recorded. Yours is a little hot. Let me turn it down.
Hot, huh?
Try it now then.
Is that better?
Yes.
I mean, it just seems pretty clear that majority does not want to regulate, shorefront property owners' moorings. And that, like you said, there's, a little bit more leaning in the way of, yes, to regulate the mooring fields.
Yeah.
That's on my mind.
Okay.
I would only add that, I think that maybe selecting no and no on the survey and those two questions may have added to that, lakefront property answer, which I agree with. And on question 4, it does look like there's more interest in regulating the mooring field, but keep in mind, there's a difference of 47 people here, and we're 200 people out of the community, 6,000. So
Fair enough.
make sure that we keep that in mind. Go ahead.
I think, because of there is a majority that want it, that we do need to pursue what that would look like.
Mooring fields. The mooring fields.
Yes, yes, for mooring fields.
Yeah, I would agree that it's clear as day to me that that most folks don't want the mooring ordinance, and honestly, even as I talk to folks who do support it out in the public, it tends to be once you learn about what that actually means for lakefront property owners, that it actually restricts you. They tend to say, "Well, I don't want it anyways." And then regarding the mooring fields, when I read through the questions and answers, it seems like most of the folks who thought yes, it was mostly geared towards for most of the answers that were that made sense and weren't just there to say something. Talked about the mooring fields, and not that they necessarily don't want a mooring field, but they almost want to protect it and make sure it just is it's a valid mooring field that folks can use it. I kept hearing about making sure that the Winthrop residents have a right to use the lake. And I think that seems to be the best way forward based off this, is both that makes it rather than a dual ordinance. Right.
Is this open forum?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Reggie. Just turn your microphone on here when you talk.
Well, okay. First of all, I'm Reggie Conrad, and this is my first meeting. And to look at this, I would look at this and from my first meeting, okay, is that the majority of the people are people from Winthrop, and that they do want to monitor that. I think it should be monitored. I think like what you're saying that people out of town should come second before the in-town people. Am I understanding that?
Well, from what I got from here is that people want to protect the right to use the lake.
Correct. So that would be the in-town people of Winthrop, the taxpayers.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
Which I would totally agree with, okay? I think it should be monitored, like what you're saying. Just to put it in
The mooring
Oh, the
fields.
mooring.
yes,
Yeah.
they should be monitored somehow, and there should be some sort of checking in system, to put a monitor, to have it be Winthrop people. So that's just how I'm feeling about it.
Just to catch you up, I think maybe Anthony, you might want to speak to this, but I think there is a state regulation, is that right? That if out of like 10% has to be out of town. So if you have 10 moorings, one of them has to be
1 out of 10.
1 out of 10, yeah.
And that is correct. Right, you're gonna.
Well, I'm curious as to how the state law also comes into play with the individual shorefront property owners. I know you've had an opportunity to seek counsel from our attorney. But it's my understanding that state law says 1 mooring for every 200 feet.
I don't recall that, Dwight. I'd have to check with the town attorney on that. What I specifically remember him saying about individual shorefront property owners is, and you saw this in some of the comments where people wanted to protect shorefront property owners from not having others more boats in front of their property, and that's simply not allowed by state law. The property owner has the first right within, I believe it was 50 feet of the shoreline to put, or maybe it was 100 feet.
I think,
To put a mooring in, and then beyond that, then someone could put a second mooring in within, 150 feet.
Yeah, they gotta be within 200 feet of the shore.
Correct.
200 feet in, and you gotta be 20 feet offshore.
Yeah,
But it doesn't limit the number of moorings based on the shore frontage. The state law, it doesn't restrict that.
yeah, I'd have to check on that, Dwight, I don't recall that, but I definitely.
I read it.
I definitely recall there, was no way to prevent people from putting a mooring in front of someone else's property. But the property owner sort of had the first right of refusal to people.
I think it was public access here. You have to have public access.
Yes, yes,
So it,
and that's what that's.
so if it's your property or your property or anybody that has property. If you don't have public access, you can't put a mooring in place or put your house away because it's not public access.
But if there is public access.
Well, yeah, but
Your house?
yeah, but Jim, you could launch your boat from a boat launch and moor it there now,
Right, up to 3 days, you can't leave a permanent mooring.
yeah.
So there's those laws.
can you
existing.
send that to us?
Yeah, that exists on the state law right now.
Right, I think it'd be advisable if we could have an opportunity to chat with the town council as we move further into this issue.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll be happy to invite him to our next meeting. Matt, you're gonna say something?
We're talking, Dwight brought up, we're back to individual mooring discussion on this topic. We're just tabling right now for a moment, right?
No, I just had a question about state law.
Yeah.
Okay, with regards to individual moorings, correct? Yeah. So it's just coming back to where I thought we were on the mooring field.
Yeah.
discussion, that's all.
Fair point. So let's turn the attention back to mooring fields. So, so 55% said they think that mooring fields should be regulated. And this would be a good question for the attorney as to, and I had this discussion with him and I apologize, I can't recall because I asked him this direct question, if that would better be handled by either ordinance or policy. And I think he said ordinance, but I'm not positive about that.
Well, that ordinance is enforceable, policy is guidance.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and I think you'd have to have somebody to enforce the ordinance.
Well, that's true.
Put it in place, so I think,
That's true.
I wanna make a point of that, is those exist on other bodies of water, mooring fields. And I've done my research for that as well, down on Sebago.
Mhm.
And that's where they have, and they are regulated, people have signed up and they check in and so forth, and again, there's state law states on what you can use for tackle and a weight and so forth, so that's all kind of defined currently already in that state law. So, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel too much with this, and if you guys are willing as a committee, you're willing to listen to it, we are kind of had a plan on how to handle something like that. If this was brought to the table.
So with what we've heard about people having some appetite for regulating a mooring field, that sort of ties directly into question number 6, which asks if you answer that the town should regulate moorings, where do you think that should occur? And setting aside the 45% who don't believe that moorings should be regulated, most of the respondents after that said it should be on all of the lakes versus some of the lakes. So, that was a question that we talked about at the last meeting is, do we want to identify the south end of Maranacook Lake or leave it open? And so, if we were to have mooring fields, it looks to me like we should explore that opportunity on other water bodies other than just Maranacook Lake.
So my question is, I mean, this is clearly, it's an obvious, it's in everybody's view, so it's kind of the thing that we're all looking at. But how do we identify, or do we wait until an issue occurs in a certain area or a lake where there is public access, and all of a sudden people are popping moorings in, and then create another mooring field in that area? I mean, that's my question is where's this gonna go?
Well, I think you guys are the resident experts. I mean, I am certainly not being so new to the community, and so I guess, you know, I would defer to you as, do you see either opportunity or potential for mooring fields in other places on other lakes than just the southern end of Marana?
Well, I think, at the refield end, near the boat landing, there's a couple more that have been put in there. So
But
that's,
is it in Reedfield or is it in Winthrop?
it's in refield, so it's not Winthrop, right? But that's true. As far as Winthrop goes, I don't know the other lakes, so I don't know, as far as Winthrop goes, I think there might be a potential to the, it's the east side of the beach, where there's access and there's some space there for a few moorings. I don't know if that would become a thing or not, I'm not sure.
And so you folks educate me again. So is that also a swim area though? Because you don't want moorings in.
No, there is a space outside the swim area between the next shorter property owner, I think that we could have a couple of. I think they were.
Yeah. There also is a possibility at the causeway between Upper and Lower Narrows. I mean, wherever you have possible access is a possible mooring field. Do you know where I mean?
We do. At last meeting, we talked about trying to identify lakes that have public access or right of ways. I'm looking at you, Anthony.
So the whole right of way thing, I did talk to somebody that's involved with the right of way situation. And my feeling is that that's not as a town, our problem. That's a legal issue between property owners, neighbors, that they all have a right of way, and they're gonna have to figure out what that means legally, as far as if you only have a 50-foot right of way, you have 10 people.
And you sort that out.
Yeah, and you sort that out. I don't think towns should be getting involved with that. I mean,
My comment on right of way is where I work at DOT.
okay.
It's a road net.
Road right.
Right, the road right of way that is parallel to a water
Right.
body. Like Barbara pointed out, Upper and Lower Narrows.
Is there parking there?
Oh, yeah.
The other good spot you can identify is you get south end of Ramco. You also, Invesco could put a brand new launch in.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. It seems to me we.
And that has parking, and it has, probably some congestion, maybe launching there. I don't launch there, so I don't know, but I went down and looked at it. It's a beautiful launch.
Well, and it seems to me maybe we ought to be, if we're gonna consider other mooring fields, it needs to be somewhere adjacent to a boat launch. A state
Car
boat
water
launch.
space or something that they have public access.
And the reason I say that is, you guys may know I work for a lake conservation organization for a year, and you don't want people just willy-nilly putting boats into a lake in these makeshift launches, because that adds phosphorus to the lake. And then you also have a higher risk of potentially introducing invasive aquatic plants
That's actually
into
the opposite.
into a water body, not according to Seven Lakes Alliance.
Yeah, but that's Seven Lakes Lines, but if you talk to Coventry Watershed, which is not, and in talking to the young lady who came to talk to us, she said, you're absolutely correct. When you do more boats, it's less lake hopping, which is less
Right,
transporting of invasive plants from lake to lake.
but I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about is someone using a makeshift launch where there's no courtesy boat inspector there to check out the watercraft to ensure that there's no fragments on it. So I think we sort of be doing a service to the lake if we want to explore mooring fields to look at places that have public boat launches as opposed to private boat launches. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I guess I just comment that, some of this discussion is good. I'm gonna suggest it's a little premature until we decide that we're gonna engage in a next action to say, let's look at a mooring field ordinance and what it might look like and how it might be established and what conditions or application would be to set one of these up. I think we're jumping into this a little bit great discussion, good part of what I think we're gonna get into, if that's where we go, as next action is to establish an alignment and agreement. That one, we're either not gonna look at an individual property mooring ordinance, that's question one. At the survey, we're seeing an alignment in one way, but we haven't voted on kind of action for the next step. We're having a discussion right now on a mooring field ordinance. And again, I've got a lot of thoughts and ideas too, as we kind of bounce around a little bit as to what it would look like, how do we do it, how many lakes, what are lakes, where are they? Where should they be, where shouldn't they be? What environmental impacts might they have? These are all things that I think we have to consider if we're gonna go into an ordinance. And these were things that I would think would be written in some form of an application. Initially, right now, as an example of a thought, I'm not so sure we, as a committee, needs to establish where these fields need to be. Necessarily, if we're gonna be protecting mooring fields in multiple lakes and so forth, I think there needs to be an evaluation and approval process.
Fair enough, I guess I was maybe jumping the gun and assuming that that's the direction we're headed. So let's just go around the table and start, we'll start with you, Matt, which direction do you think we should be headed?
Well, I'm just, based on the survey, I'm in agreement with, I read the comments. I think it's very important too that we read the comments
Agreed.
of these and not just look at the numbers of the statistics of who said yay and who said nay. So I think the content of some of the comments really start to bring out some of the positioning of some of those votes. So what I would say, my opinion right now, based on just kind of the discussionary points we're at, it appears to me I'd be favoring more of no individual property owner ordinance. And I would make a motion to kind of pass in that direction on our action. And then I would spend more time as supported by, based on my review of the survey, a discussion around what a mooring field looks like. And move forward with that discussion based on the time that we're gathered as a committee over the next year. I agree. I'm long-winded, like you know that.
I agree as well. And regarding the moored fields, I don't even know if the initial conversation needs to be about where they need to be placed. I think the important thing is to set the framework up so that once we establish in the future, maybe there needs to be a mooring ordinance on Combahee, at least as a framework for that. So there doesn't have to be a whole mooring committee to get set up to do that. There's sort of a framework and the council can just take care of it from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Matt. If we moved in that direction, an ordinance should say, okay, here's what a mooring field in Winthrop looks like, regardless of where it is.
No. Size of the property and water will make a huge difference too. Because if you're dealing with upper narrows or lower narrows, can you imagine the adjustment that those property owners there with boats in lower narrows or upper narrows? I mean, that would be talk about a culture shock. I
On
think
Golden Pond destroyed.
correct. I mean, it's it certainly is. I think this is a well put together committee so far, and I'm glad to be a part of it because I have a right of way, and I don't want to upset anybody by putting a mooring out in front of somebody else's house. But I have to have some sort of way to get onto the lake, to get to my boat, whether it be paddling out there or not. I just want to have these people feel as comfortable with me there as they feel, it's all about getting along, and I think having someone judging the amount of boats that are gonna be down there certainly makes a huge difference. So.
Lest I forget about her, Barb, what are your thoughts on the discussion?
I think that having restrictions on the amount of boats in a space and how far away from each other they can be is necessary. Some kind of some kind of control over the amount of increase. And I agree with like upper narrows and lower narrows. It's a smaller pond, and so a lot of boats there would have an impact. But I think regulating how close they are to each other and how many you can fit into a space is part of what we need to do.
Yay on, developing some mooring field regulations.
Yes.
I'm all for, having a set of rules for mooring fields, and again, the elephant in the room is always the moorings at the end of South End of Marina. Those rules, regulations, ideas, those were all presented to town council, so there was a process that got us to this point. I don't know what's going to that, why we're talking about this in the first place, was because of a perceived wrongdoing by freeholders, non-taxpayers, which is, you know, I think if we look at these comments and we read through them, Matt suggested, I think it's eye-opening, so I think it's worth doing.
I agree, I agree with, no regulations for our property, shortcut property owners, and we should look at the mooring fields and figure out what's a reasonable solution to that.
All right, well, with that, as Matt said, what is a good next step? You want to weigh in on that first, Matt?
Yeah, I'll just use my same recommendation. I think the next steps is to, you know, is to charge to start understanding, and I think we started this debate a little bit as to what are some topics, what are some pieces that we know needs to be evaluated within a mooring field. I'm gonna call it an application, because kind of, you know, I'm leaning towards the fact that you can't just have, you know, people just say, okay, I'm gonna establish a mooring field, this is where it is. It's gonna be some sort of an application approval type process, which is gonna take under consideration stakeholders like conservation, lake conservation groups, environmental impacts associated with the number of boats on water, and all of those types of things. So I think we start the discussion like we were starting it. There's going to be some points that we need to evaluate, and then we need to kind of understand what that starts to look like with regards to the stakeholder of topics that we need to evaluate for mooring fields in bodies of water. And as we've got some good feedback from the survey with regards to some people's responses with regards to smaller bodies of water, bigger bodies of water, you know, public access to these bodies of water, and those types of things. And the associations with, you know, now get away from the water bodies and where people parking, and are we causing other problems on the land side of these type infrastructures? Those are things that I think we should dive into as a discussion as a group, and start kind of drafting that up and move in that direction. I do want to go back to Dwight's question on the we need to be, as we also look at these topics that we might need to consider in an application type process, the state side of the legality, and understand that clearly. Not to say that we don't understand it clearly, but really taking that into consideration as we don't want to recreate something that's already in statute and law.
Yeah, that's what we got the attorney for. Right, you want to suggest next step?
I think it would behoove us to perhaps solicit input and review of other communities, see what they've done already, rather than reinvent the wheel. Let's look at other communities have already have in place. And I know there's multiple communities that have existing ordinances in place. And I think if we review that, we may be able to harvest some of the best out of all of those.
Also, you guys have the red line version of the mooring ordinance.
Yes, we do.
Do we get that? I gotta look back and see.
It's on the website.
It's on the website, the red line version? Okay.
Yeah.
The town website.
Yep.
I do think too, because I was surprised to hear you say there were 11 bodies of water in Winthrop. So I think it'd be important to identify each body of water, so we have a list to start with, and,
Also on the website.
okay, all right, I'll do that.
I was gonna say, see how many we can get.
So Matt, what about you? What do you think good next steps are?
Yeah, I think an assessment, and maybe not even a task for you, but maybe a task for one of us is to look through some more ordinances, come back, but more importantly, I think to invite the attorney at some point,
Yeah.
whether it be next meeting or.
Well, and I wanted to discuss that here in a second, but I have an excellent resource available right here at my fingertips. There is a town manager listserv, and so believe me, town managers are never interested in reinventing the wheel. So what I will do tomorrow is send out an email through the listserv, just to say, hey, for those of you who have communities with regulated mooring fields, would you please send me your ordinances? Perfect. Regarding those.
That's great.
Perfect.
30 seconds.
So Reggie,
So I guess we're
you
done.
have thoughts? We may well be. You have thoughts that, how we should move forward?
No, just moving forward in that direction is fine with me.
Okay.
Should we have a vote to, not pursue regulations for the individual moorings?
You know, I don't actually think it's necessary. I think it's, a vote is always good when you're actually taking some action as opposed to not.
I have a question, just listening.
Jim, you interrupted Mike.
Mike can go. You can have this one.
I yield to the gentleman in black.
My question is you talking and it triggered my head a little bit. The word, the verbiage everybody uses, right? So we're talking ordinance. Are we talking ordinance or we talking, you guys, somebody made a good policy. So are we talking policy? Because and there's no stranger, I'm on the council. If we put something in place as an ordinance, then it has to be enforced. So then we have to find out how do we enforce it and who do it is enforce it. But such as a policy doesn't quite meet that level of having enforcement. So I ask you guys, as you look into this and dive forward and use Mike as a resource, because he's done a lot of the research with me with different communities and all the research that we've done in different areas. But look towards that, and I think they were actually, that was a good term, I never thought of it, but policy is a good word to use. But how they were set up and how they were in place, how you signed up, and so on and so forth, in a waiting list and such as that. So I think there was some good, because it may just me, I may be really biased on it, but I thought we put some really good stuff together that we presented to the council at one point that made a lot of sense. As far as, because I'm a believer in the lakes, I'm pro protect the lakes, I'm pro people should use the lakes. All taxpayers should use the water, but just be careful when you're talking ordinance. Because you put that term in there, then we're gonna have to enforce something, or task somebody to enforce it.
Yeah, and I do think we'll have to rely upon the attorney to some extent as to the best approach.
I think that may be a good question for your listserv, though.
Yeah.
How are those regulations?
Yes,
presented in
so
your-
so what I've written down here is I'm gonna solicit from other communities that have mooring field regulations to share those with us, whether that is either policy or ordinance. And I'm gonna assume that whatever I receive, enforcement will be noted in either a policy or an ordinance in some form or fashion. Matt?
Yeah, just to follow up on Jamie's questions or just commenting around policy, ordinance and so forth. One of the things that I also wanted to share back, Mike, and talk to the statement of concern of, the mooring field that's down at by the point right now that's in use and so forth. One of the reasons why I feel pretty important to understand a document that is gonna get created, whether that's policy or ordinance, I lean towards ordinance, I'll tell you that, is that so that we're not having this discussion 6 years from now with regards to a situation that might be down there like it is on the point right now, regardless of if it's, changed legally there or not legally there. The information that was provided in the draft, in the ordinance draft that's in place right now, we'll take a look at those languages, we'll take a look at what those things were. But, I guess the point that I really want to stress is that the reason I'm behind a mooring field ordinance is I don't want to see this discussion, you know, in the same places where we are 5 years from now. I'm not to say that, I'm also qualifying that statement with the fact that every ordinance needs to be reviewed as a living document, or a policy document needs to be reviewed as a living document as you move forward. Life changes, world changes, things happen, but my main support around more of a document that we can provide some compliance, regulation, efforts, actions, whatever that term we want to use. That's why I feel it's strongly that these things, I think we can look to, we can understand the concerns from the survey of parties, impacts and associations and so forth. And those are things that I think need to be, what this committee is going to do in drafting the next step document. So it's just a couple of thoughts. Thanks.
So just to make sure everyone has a voice here, Mike, are you comfortable with the direction this is headed?
I am, I'm all, I don't want to see that mooring field go unregulated and get out of control and then be back here in 2 years saying, we really should have done something about mooring field. And that's not to say that one, it's not gonna crop up on another body of water, although we've never really seen that problem present itself. I mean, that the problem has been notably at Maranacook, although I don't feel that it's ever been a problem. So, you know, to prevent it happening or to prevent this perceived getting out of control, you know, rules can be in place and can benefit everybody. There's room there to establish a mooring field. There is a way to create revenue either for conservation or the town of Winthrop. And there's a way to make it equitable for everybody. Absolutely.
And so lastly, Barb, are you feeling good about this direction?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Just to answer Dwayne's question, ask the lawyer, go ahead and ask the lawyer, not part of the bill, but being part of all this, being on the council, and then multiple meetings about this, prior to, he said it's our ordinance. You can write it however you want. And I believe that's what he said, wasn't like one of the meetings, he says, your ordinance. So if you guys kind of come up with something, he'll draft it, the language around what you guys would like to see.
Right.
As a committee.
As a town council.
Well, that is true, but it also has to stand to legal muster.
But that's why he's writing it based on using the verbiage.
Well, not only that, but it can't be in conflict with state statute or the state constitution or whatever. So speaking of the lawyer, here's what I might suggest. You guys, if you want to take a different path, please just tell me. But I think Matt made a good suggestion. We need time to read through all 198 plus 58 comments to see if anything sort of bubbles up with that, so we can discuss that at our next meeting. I think it might be more helpful that we are able to digest that along with whatever information we get from other towns about their mooring fields before we invite the attorney.
I like that.
But you're kind of staring at me. Do you disagree?
I think we can cover all those bases in one meeting.
You do?
Yeah, I think we gotta start yabba dabba doing.
Okay.
It's not getting more than an hour.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
So what I will do, just to make sure that you get, I mean, you already have all the comments.
Well, just to sort of flesh out my responses, the numbers, I think, is what we're relying on, right? The comments are filler.
Yeah,
And my takeaway, yeah, I'm retentive. I read all of them. And the theme through most of them is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but existing shorefront property owners are worried about having someone put up a boat in front of their house.
yeah, and they're only gonna have limited control.
Right. I mean, I
Understated law.
saw, there seemed to be, most of those, the vast majority were supporting of some type of regulation. even those that were kind of indirect, we need to protect the lake, but still provide access, and,
So I do it, as I get responses from other towns, I will forward that to you guys so that you'll have plenty of time to digest it, so that you can sort of condense your thoughts, make the best use of the attorney's time whenever he's there next.
we're supposed to have something by August of next year, right?
Yeah,
And it's November,
Yeah.
next meeting, November.
okay, so the next meeting. Would be November, no, I was just making sure that wasn't the case, November 16th at 5:30, which is the week before Thanksgiving, so that.
I'm out of town that week and I'm in a place where I'm not gonna have
Okay,
access, but that's fine. I think we're all,
everyone else can make it, okay, well, we'll plan on doing that. Is there anything else that we need to discuss here tonight?
Likely, one last comment for all you guys as you ponder on this and put it in your purview. I mean, you made a perfect example, Dwight. I used to live on the lake, and I'd have been furious if somebody had put a mooring right in front of my house. Obviously, it's been very difficult, and they would have had a very difficult time with that, but that's just how it handles, but we don't see that issue today. So keep that in mind. I mean, people have that thought process, and that's why I was against it, because if I paid my taxes on the lake, I would not want to be limited to saying I can only have one mooring. Or X moorings. I mean, if I feel as I can fit it in there so they don't wreck my boats, I'm gonna put two, or I'm gonna have a swim boat out there, what have you, in front of my property. But just keep in mind, don't try to fix something that's not really broken there right now, because I don't think anybody's dropping moorings in front of somebody's homes.
Ask Barbara.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, except for the mooring field in front of my house.
I can ask Barbara, because it's not in front of your house, it's to the left of your house. And to the right of your house is a boat launch with docks that are traffic coming in and out. So I can ask Barbara that, because I know there's no mooring that's not hers, because there's people that live there that have moorings right in front of hers, but there's nobody in that mooring community on that south end of Randwick Lake that's in front of Barbara's house.
Just for the record, we're moving ahead with drafting a document for a mooring field ordinance.
Yeah.
That's all.
yeah,
Just for the record.
Yeah.
We've made an aligned decision that we're not looking at individual mooring balls. Thank you for the comment. I mean, we could look at that. But we're looking at, our action is a mooring field ordinance draft.
Correct.
and can respect for adjacent shorefront property owners be a part of that, or do we not have
That will
any?
be a part of it. That'll be one of those things that I hope, as Wade was saying in our next meeting, one of my desires is to be able to outline, okay, location, impacts, environmental, spacing, all of those things are gonna be bulleted as to areas that I think this committee is gonna be able to come up with to understand how we need to evaluate when somebody comes to whatever body of water it might be that wants to put a mooring field in, and where, and how that might have an effect or mitigated effect as a result of that occupation of that mooring field in those bodies of water. That's our goal.
And at the same time, I think with the attorney here, the town attorney, that we will be able to clarify exactly what the state regulations are and how that plays into all that.
I think something that we've got to consider as well is the definition of a mooring field, correct?
And hopefully you'll get some information.
Yeah, as many of you may know, sort of the beginning of many ordinances has definitions at the very beginning of it, so I think it's a good point, Dwight. Anything else? We have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Going back to bed, Laura? Are you going back to bed?
Yeah, in 6 hours, I start